Welcome back to FinWeek Money Matters. Art has always been regarded as a celebration of man's creativity, but there are some sound underlying economic fundamentals for using it as an investment choice. Now, South Africa is developing a vibrant group of artists creating real wealth for savvy investors. So we take a look at what is working and who's hot on the art investment scene here in South Africa. Joining us for this discussion, Mark Ashton, still with me, Garth Tennyson, FinWeek journalist, Megan Kidd, curator at Ntoto Gallery, and Imre Lamprecht, head of the art department at Stephan Welz and Co. Thanks for joining us all. Garth, you've done an article on this before. You've taken a look at it. I mean, it's the case of banks do it, celebrities do it, wealthy people do it, royals do it. Why should the man in the street do it?
Well, I guess what you omitted to say is fools also do it, and this is the problem with art, is it's actually not a very easy thing to get into. So about a year ago, we started looking at a few alternative investment classes, art, classic cars, etc. And what I was really trying to get to the bottom of is if someone is out there with a bit of money, they'd like a nice artwork on their wall, but they want to buy something that hopefully will appreciate over time. How do you go about finding out what is good art and what isn't good art? How do you break into this? It's not like phoning up your unit trust broker and looking for something to invest in. It's a very tricky asset class. Mm-hmm. It doesn't pay dividends, it doesn't pay interest, and that's why we got the experts on here today to sort of show us the ropes.
Imre, so take us through the art scene in South Africa. Is there kind of a growth in terms of new young artists that potentially wants to bet on in terms of buying their art now for the future?
New artists is actually Megan's thing, because she's into gallery market. I'm in the secondary market, which is the auction market, which is obviously more traditional artists that have been around for many, many years. But the South African art scene has grown tremendously in the last few years. We've seen major jumps in what works are going for, many records broken, lots more people attending auctions, lots more people buying art, spending.
Is it the type of person who's buying art now changed?
I'd say it's still I mean, people are into art more because it's gone into such a big thing, and it's more accessible via the internet and TV, etc., etc. So it's still your private individual mostly, and then you obviously get your dealers, etc., etc., that buy it too. But I think a lot of younger people are getting into the art market as well. Mm-hmm. It's not just your older sort of 40 plus, 50 plus people buying anymore.
So tell us about the young artists that are up and coming, and how potentially we could get to know about them to perhaps invest in their art.
Well, the contemporary South African scene is actually a very, very exciting place to be right now. There's a lot happening. There's a lot of creativity. And how one would sort of get into collecting young contemporary artists is by immersing yourself in the art world. So getting yourself onto mailing lists of galleries, auction houses, that type of thing, and actually attending the openings, feeling the vibe, walking around, and actually by doing that, you'll start to develop your own taste, and you'll start finding that you're being drawn to more and more of the same type of aesthetic. And once you've done that, you can start doing research about the artists that you find yourselves drawn to.
Mm-hmm. But it's all, subjective. And how do you know that what you see as fantastic and beautiful and potentially able to reap rewards from is going to, in fact, grow in value?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a challenge I have. I mean, I can relate to Adrian Saville sitting there and telling me how he picks a business, how he picks it as an investment, because you can see there's metrics there that are real, that you can understand. You can understand management, you can understand the dividends, etc. But art is something very, one, it's personal, and secondly, your taste is maybe very different from what everyone else likes. And so how do you ensure that there's a value creation that's actually coming through there? And that's why I really battle to get my head around this. Not only am I giving up a big chunk of my wall to accommodate a certain piece of art, but I've now got to try and assume that I'm still trying to work out whether there's any value actually being created by it sitting there.
So how do we approach answering this question?
Well, the interesting thing that Megan said earlier on is that even if you do manage to find an artist who is really good at what they do and will have some works that appreciate over time, not all of their works will appreciate over time, and that's the other tricky thing. So I mean, over to you, Megan. How do you pick a really good artist?
A good artist. Well, how I essentially try to break it down for some of my clients who ask me the same question is that the artists who have history books written about them are artists who open doors for contemporary artists that come after them. So for instance, you might walk into a gallery and see a really beautiful painting of a vase of roses that's almost photographically painted, and you might think to yourself, what incredible skill has that taken to produce that picture, and that is incredibly skillful. However, we have seen that for decades. You know, it's not something that's breaking boundaries. Art is supposed to be something that feeds the soul, but also that breaks mental, emotional, and social boundaries. So that's where art should be taking it to the next level, and that's the difference between decorative art and fine art. And where the investment lies is in fine art, and it's the responsibility of a gallerist and a curator or an auctioneer to make that clear to someone who's considering investing in art.
The other interesting thing is, like journalists, a lot of artists are becoming entrepreneurs. So there's this term, artrepreneur, and I told Megan I wouldn't bring him up, but Conor McCready is quite a well-known South African entrepreneur, and you were saying earlier on how good he is at marketing his paintings. How do you? I mean, is that something you should do if you want to buy a painting purely to make money out of it? Should you pick someone who's a bit of a marketing guru as well?
Absolutely. I mean, Conor is a prime example of someone who's brilliant at marketing himself. He's huge on Twitter, social media. People follow him, people know his name. And, you know, art is an investment not only for its rarity value, but also for people want to covet something. And art has a lot of that surrounding it. So Conor is very, very good at putting his art in the spotlight, as well as his own personality, and in that way I think he could be very collectible.
What are the considerations you have to have when it comes to fine art and the cost of holding it? Because you have to put it in good light. You have to, of course, think about the insurance value that you have to place in it. So what are all those considerations, and how does that impact the value of your investment further down the line?
Well, obviously, you're gonna obviously buy an art piece, and depending on what you spend on it, it is definitely always advisable to have your art collection insured. There are different companies that you can do that through. Depending on if you have it in your home or if you have it in storage, because a lot of people have larger collections and can't display it all in one go. It's good to have a sort of asset register, have everything photographed so that you've got proof that it's your piece. It's basically those sorts of things. Insurance obviously amounts to a lot. Have it reevaluated every year or two to make sure that you're sort of paying on par with what the value of the work is currently. And then basically just chatting to people in the industry to see.
But it's expensive, all these additional costs apart from the buying price.
It can get very expensive, yes. So, you know, if you're not going to look at what I call hidden costs, you know, you might get yourself into a bit of a tiz.
It's like buying an expensive luxury car.
Yeah, I mean, the secondary market kind of I find interesting because I can kind of equate it with the stock market. So you know, in investing terms, you've got to buy and hold. In other words, you keep this thing for as long as you go until you basically keel over and your estate sells it. Or, I mean, to your point about the revaluations, I mean, can art be something that's traded on a regular basis? I mean, do I buy it this year and I see a revaluation next year and I kind of cash in on it?
It's not advisable to sell art too quickly, just because it is such a... because everything's on the internet, if I can use that term, it's readily available to the man on the street. They know when last was sold and for how much as well. So art is really something that you buy to hold on to for a good few years.
How long is that? I mean, if we had to put this into investment terms, what's the investment horizon?
So you'd probably sort of equate it more towards the property market than any other market. It's a longer term, 5 to 15 years at least. So it's not a make a dash money. It's not, you're not going to buy it today and sell it tomorrow for, you know, an extra 100K. It's not going to happen.
Does it go through cycles like the property market?
Yes, it does. I mean, you guys must definitely see that too.
Definitely. Yeah.
Give us an idea, you know, just to give us an example perhaps.
Well, they call it the tail of the dog. So they say it's the last thing to be affected when you know, things go south, and it's the last thing to actually come right. So interestingly enough, this year we've seen great leaps and bounds in the art market. We've had some very successful art auctions locally and internationally. And also from a gallery perspective, we're seeing great renewed interest, lots of new clients. There's a lot of buzz around the art market at the moment. So I think we're seeing a lot of recovery.
That's interesting, because now we're also talking about in South Africa kind of going into a dip now, perhaps, once again, and it seems that things aren't looking so good. So you wonder if that's also going to come in terms of how that's going to affect the art market.
Like I think there is. I mean, you know, we were just chatting off air, just looking at the parking lot, for instance. It feels like people feel richer at the moment, and I mean, I think it is encouraging to hear something like that, which is sort of a lagging indicator, says that, you know, actually people are doing all right. I think that, you know, you remember in South Africa, though, we still have a super rich element, which, you know, there's a big gap between the super rich and the rest of the economy, and I think you kind of have to take that with a pinch of salt from that perspective.
I mean, we were talking about shares earlier, and we were talking about if you just took 10,000 rand, or was it 10,000 or 50? 10,000 rand per share, you know, 10 years ago, 50,000 rand investment, you would have made 6.5 million rand in these kind of small cap stocks. So can you look at art like in the same way, where you have kind of a small relative investment in an artist that's up and coming and be able to make that kind of money, that scale of money?
It has happened. It has happened, but it's definitely not predictable. Art is an emotional purchase, and often the trends that artists follow are also emotional ones. So, like I said, it has happened, but it would be very difficult to be able to predict that type of thing, especially that kind of growth.
Just on predictions, the one thing that I'm interested in is Brett Murray. And he's a guy who became famous, infamous, however you want to cast it. But he's got a name for himself now. Does that event make him more valuable to own, or not necessarily?
Absolutely. Being a
well, you talk
household
about breaking
name.
boundaries. That's certainly an example.
Exactly. I mean, Brett is a very, very successful contemporary artist, even before all of that happened. So he had a great name for himself in the art community. But becoming a household name is always going to make your artworks much more sought after. So that's where the marketing comes in, where a person who perhaps hasn't had that much experience in the art world but wants to purchase an established artist's work, they'll probably walk into a gallery asking his name because they know it.
Yeah, I mean, Imre, I was going to say, you know, exactly to this example now. So somebody sees the television insert, they see Brett Murray, you know, maybe they should actually go and have a revaluation.
Yeah.
I mean, what's kind of the process? How does somebody say, okay, cool, I want to now get out of my investment in art? I mean, how do we get it into the secondary market?
So basically, they bring it through to us. We'll put a value to the work based on what the current market value of the artwork is, and that's based on previous sales of the artwork through galleries and auctions. And then if the client is happy with the value that's been attached to the actual painting, it goes on to the next sale that's available. So in our case, we do 6 auctions a year, 3 in Cape Town, 3 in Johannesburg, and whichever you prefer to do next, we'll then include it in that and market it on your behalf.
Is auctioneering kind of the way, the process that you get rid of, or maybe get rid of is probably the wrong word, but actually sell art?
To sell art, I think your broader market, secondary market, yes. It's also probably the easiest way for you to sell your piece, because we do all the work, if I can put it that way. We promote the work, we market it, we make sure that the clients come in. We bring out a catalogue and send it through, you know, the whole of South Africa and internationally. So you stand a greater chance in selling your piece.
What about approaching galleries? Yeah, I mean, is that also another option?
Yes, it is. For people who own historical works, it's kind of the way they do it is they take it to auction houses more often than they'll take it to a gallery, because auction houses have an established reputation as selling historical works. Often people who've bought a work by a contemporary artist who then want to sell the work, they'll take that work back to the same gallery, because that gallery will actually market that same work to the clients who've bought of the same artist before.
Do only rich people buy art? I mean, can the average person at home visit your gallery and find a painting that's
journalists.
reasonably, even journalists, find a painting that's reasonably priced. Is it doable?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Give us an idea of some of the kind of artworks that you've got in terms of starting prices that you see as, from an investment perspective, having value.
What I always suggest to people who are first getting into investing in art is investing in beautiful, limited edition, high quality prints. We have some amazing printing studios in South Africa, and most of our top contemporary artists do produce series of lithographs or etchings. Now these are limited editions, so they do have the rarity value, and there aren't just an endless number of these prints made. You're looking at spending, I'm speaking in very general terms here, unframed, about between 5,000 and 10,000 rand for a beautiful print. And then it's not a huge commitment that you've made, but if you love it, it can sit on your wall, and there's a chance that in a couple of years it might have appreciated in value.
Just to add on to that, we feel the same way. If you're sort of an entry-level buyer, we cater to that as well. Every April, our sale has got a section called Works on Paper, which is exactly that, where we introduce, well-known artists like Kentridge or Diane Victor. Works on paper, like Wayne said, it's limited edition, so you know that there's only 5 or 10 or 20 of these around, and it's not going to cost an arm and a leg, but you know that it's by a good artist that could possibly be worthwhile in the future.
What if you want to buy in South Africa and you're looking to get exposure to art from artists offshore, international artists? How do you do that?
Well, look, you can come chat to galleries and auction houses about which artists to buy, but I suppose people get in touch with auction houses overseas as well, to see what the current trends are. And contemporary art is very hot at the moment worldwide. The market is just going up. Then emerging markets like China, India, people are also going crazy after their art. So it just depends on what you're after and what you want to buy. And you can contact all of those auction houses, or you can come chat to us.
Yeah. Well, just to wrap this up, Megan, you talked about breaking boundaries as the starting point for choosing art that is a good investment. Anything else, any other point you'd like to make in terms of advice for people looking to invest?
I think probably the best advice I could give is to actually just choose something that you love. The art market is quite volatile, and there are absolutely no guarantees. So at the end of the day, it's an investment that you're going to be living with. So it's important to choose something that you want to put in your home and that you'll love, whether it appreciates in value or not.
Yeah, so there we go. Passion investment, one might term it as. Thanks for joining us today, Megan Kidd, curator at Entrylevel Gallery, and Imre Lamprecht, head of the art department at Stephan Welz Co. After the break, we're taking a look at the entrepreneurial section today, where we're taking a look at the impact that taxes have on small businesses here in South Africa. More Fin Week Money Matters straight after this.